In a forgotten European town, in the year 1784, a man walked to his death. But instead of weeping, instead of begging for mercy, he did something that shocked the world. He laughed. He laughed as the rope tightened around his neck. His name was Lazzaro Vanetti, a poor scholar, a sharp-tongued rebel, and a man whose words cut deeper than any sword. He mocked the king. He mocked the priests. He mocked death itself. And when they caught him, they thought hanging him would silence his laughter forever. But on the day of his execution, something was wrong. He did not cry. He did not tremble. He walked, smiling. When the priest begged him to repent, Lazzaro grinned and said, "Father, if God truly loves laughter, then perhaps I will be the first man to enter heaven laughing." And then the lever fell. But instead of screams, the courtyard shook with the sound of his laughter. Children screamed, women fainted, even the executioner stumbled back. And some swore that even after his body went still, his lips were still smiling. But was this madness? Or was it something more? Because months later, a rumor spread. The man who laughed at his own execution had never died at all. The air was heavy with silence, a silence so strange that even the rattling chains of the prisoner echoed like thunder in the courtyard of the old stone prison. It was the year 1784, in a forgotten European town, where justice was swift, brutal, and often public. Crowds gathered not only to see justice served, but to witness the spectacle of death itself. And today, they had gathered for a man who had shaken the very soul of the city. A man whose name was whispered with both fear and fascination. Lazzaro Vanetti. He was no ordinary criminal. Some said he was a thief. Others claimed he was a murderer. But the stories that traveled through taverns and marketplaces painted him as something more. A man who challenged authority with words sharper than knives. And now, he was about to face execution. Yet as the guards dragged him towards the scaffold, there was something unsettling about him. He wasn't crying, he wasn't trembling, he was smiling. The square was full. Merchants, peasants, nobles hiding behind masks, even children perched on their fathers' shoulders. Execution days were holidays for some. The wooden scaffold had been erected in the center, its noose swaying like a serpent waiting to strike. But the crowd wasn't here just to see a hanging. They were here to see him, the man who had mocked judges, laughed in front of soldiers, and even turned his trial into a theater of wit. "Do you regret your crimes?" the priest had asked him days earlier. His reply? "Regret. The only regret I have is that I cannot see the look on your faces after I am gone." That reply alone had spread like wildfire through the city. And now here he was, his hands bound, his fate sealed. The executioner was a tall man in a black hood. He tightened the rope, adjusting the knot carefully. He had seen countless criminals beg, weep, or faint before the final moment. But never had he seen someone grin like this. Lazzaro tilted his head slightly and whispered, loud enough for the crowd to hear, "Don't make the knot too tight, friend. I still need to breathe. For my last laugh." The crowd gasped. A ripple of murmurs spread. Some chuckled nervously, others spat in disgust, but no one could take their eyes off him. Who was this man? 10 years earlier, Lazzaro was a poor scholar, a man of books and ideas. He despised the corrupt nobles who ruled the land, feeding on the blood of peasants. Instead of wielding swords, he wielded words. He wrote pamphlets mocking the king. He sang songs in taverns ridiculing priests. And soon his laughter became a weapon, infectious, dangerous, uncontrollable. The people loved him. The rulers hated him. When they caught him, they didn't just want to kill him. They wanted to crush his spirit. But how do you crush a man whose spirit is laughter itself? As the rope was placed around his neck, Lazzaro turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, he shouted. "I must confess, today is my first time performing on such a high stage." Some peasants laughed nervously. Others shushed them. The guards scowled. "Silence!" barked the judge from the platform. But silence was the last thing Lazaro intended to give them. The old priest stepped forward, holding a cross. "My son, repent now. Laughing will not save your soul." Lazaro leaned forward, his smile wider than ever. "Father, if God truly loves laughter, then perhaps I will be the first man to enter heaven laughing." The priest froze. The crowd stirred. Some even clapped, before realizing this was a death sentence, not a comedy show. The executioner raised his hand. The drums rolled, signaling the final moment. "Any last words?" the judge asked coldly. Lazaro took a deep breath. His eyes scanned the sea of faces, searching for something or someone. His lips curled. "Yes," he said, "listen carefully, for this will be my last. And my loudest." The trapdoor creaked beneath him. The rope tightened around his neck. But as the lever was pulled, instead of a scream, instead of a struggle, the courtyard erupted with the sound of his laughter. Loud, defiant, unnatural. A laugh so sharp it cut through the drums, through the cries, through the silence of centuries. Even as the rope choked him, his body shaking, the sound of his laugh echoed. Children screamed. Women fainted. The executioner himself stumbled back. For some swore. Even after his body hung lifeless, his mouth remained twisted in a grin. The crowd dispersed in shock. Some said it was madness. Others whispered it was sorcery. But there were a few, just a few, who swore they had felt something strange that day, a spark of courage, a strange freedom. Because if a man could laugh in the very face of death, what else could be laughed at? Kings, judges, even fate itself? And so, long after Lazaro's body was buried in an unmarked grave, his story lived on. Songs were sung, jokes were whispered, and a legend was born, the prisoner who laughed during his execution. But legends are never simple. Behind Lazaro's final laugh lay a secret that some believed could shake the throne itself. Because what if his laughter wasn't madness? What if it was a message? And what if someone hidden in the crowd that day understood it? For weeks after Lazaro's death, the town could not stop talking. Taverns buzzed with drunken tales, streets hummed with gossip, and in the marketplace, mothers warned their children not to laugh too loudly, lest they invite the spirit of the hanged man. But whispers traveled faster than truth. Some said his laughter was the madness of a man broken by torture. Others swore it was the defiance of a soul too strong for chains. Yet a few believed something darker, stranger. They claimed Lazaro's laugh carried a hidden message. On the night after the execution, a cloaked figure walked into a candle-lit tavern. He ordered no drink, spoke no word, and sat silently until the drunken songs began. One old beggar, half blind, sang of Lazaro's final moments. He laughed as the rope took him. He laughed till the end. The stranger leaned forward and whispered, "Not till the end. After it." The beggar froze. "What do you mean?" But the stranger was already gone, leaving behind a single silver coin on the table, engraved not with the king's face, but with a tiny smiling mask. Unbeknownst to the crowd, Lazaro had planned his death as carefully as a stage performance. Every word he spoke, every joke he cracked, even the timing of his laugh, it was all part of something greater. Before his capture, Lazaro had been writing letters. Letters not of comedy, but of rebellion. He belonged to a secret brotherhood, the Masked Dawn, men and women sworn to topple the tyrant king. And his execution? It wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Months later, strange events shook the kingdom. A judge was found dead in his chambers, a smile carved into his lifeless face. The tax collector's mansion burned, but no valuables were stolen. Instead, written across the walls in soot were the words, "The laugh lives on." Fear spread through the nobles. They had hanged the man, but his laughter still haunted them. The peasants, however, began to smile in secret. Every whisper of Lazaro's name gave them hope. Every hidden chuckle in the market was rebellion in disguise. The king himself grew restless. He summoned his advisors, slamming his fist upon the throne. "You told me his death would silence them, yet now his voice is louder than before." An old advisor trembled. "Majesty, perhaps killing him gave him immortality. The people remember not the noose, but the laugh." The king roared. "Then we must erase the memory of the laugh itself." Orders were given. All songs, all writings, all whispers of Lazaro were to be punished by death. But you cannot kill laughter. The more you forbid it, the louder it grows in silence. One night, in a hidden cellar beneath the city, a group of men and women gathered. They lit no torches, for they feared being seen. At the head of the table sat the cloaked stranger from the tavern. He pulled down his hood, revealing a thin, sharp face with eyes that gleamed like fire. He spoke only one sentence. Lazaro's last laugh was not his end, it was our command. He pulled out a scrap of parchment, smuggled from the execution ground. On it were strange markings, hidden beneath his final jokes. It was a map leading to something buried beneath the city itself. The tunnels beneath the old prison were ancient, built by forgotten kings. Few dared to enter them, for they were said to be cursed. But the Brotherhood followed the map. Their footsteps echoed through the darkness until they reached a stone door. On the door was a carving, not of saints, not of kings, but of a man laughing. And beneath it, in Lazaro's handwriting, "Where one man laughs in death, 100 shall laugh in life." Inside, they found crates of weapons, gold, and documents, plans Lazaro had prepared long before his capture. His death had been the spark, his laughter the signal, and now his brothers and sisters would carry the fire. The story of the laughing prisoner was no longer just a tale to frighten children. It had become a weapon sharper than any sword, stronger than any chain, because laughter had become rebellion. And in the shadows of the kingdom, the sound of hidden chuckles grew louder every night. The story of the laughing prisoner was no longer just a tale to frighten children. It had become a weapon sharper than any sword, stronger than any chain, because laughter had become rebellion. And in the shadows of the kingdom, the sound of hidden chuckles grew louder every night. But the real question remained. Had Lazaro truly died that day? Some swore they saw him buried. Others whispered that the man who laughed on the gallows was never Lazaro at all. The kingdom had changed. On the surface, life went on. Markets bustled, carriages rolled through cobbled streets, soldiers patrolled in polished armor. But beneath it all, there was a silence filled with whispers, with rumors, with laughter that seemed to echo where no one stood. The nobles feared it. The peasants cherished it. And the king barely slept. One stormy evening, in the candlelit chambers of the palace, the royal physician dared to speak. "Sire," he whispered, "I was there when they cut down his body." The king turned sharply, and the physician swallowed hard. The body, it did not look like Lazaro. The scars were wrong. The teeth were different. Some say it was another man, an actor perhaps. The king's eyes widened. "You dare suggest the man we hanged was not him?" The physician bowed, trembling. "I only suggest, my king. Perhaps that is why he laughed. Perhaps it was not laughter of defiance, but laughter of deception." The king slammed his goblet against the wall. Wine splattered like blood. "If he lives," he growled, "then his ghost is not what haunts me. It is his plan." Weeks later, in a marketplace crowded with peasants and merchants, a juggler appeared. He performed tricks, told jokes, and made children laugh. but his jokes were strange. Every punchline mocked the king. Every laugh carried hidden meaning. And just before disappearing into the alleyways, he turned to the crowd, winked, and said, "Remember, a laugh is sharper than a sword, and some men never stop laughing." For a moment, people swore. They saw Lazaro's grin. The secret society, the masked dawn, spread like wildfire. Farmers, blacksmiths, even soldiers joined quietly. At night, symbols of a smiling mask were painted on palace walls. Coins with grinning faces appeared in markets. And every time the guards tried to stamp it out, the people laughed louder. The rebellion was no longer hidden, it was growing. The king summoned his most loyal general. "Find him," the king ordered, his voice shaking. "Alive or dead, I don't care. If Lazaro still lives, I want his head. And if he is already dead, then bring me the ones who carry his laugh." The general bowed. But deep inside, even he wondered. What if the laugh had no face anymore? What if it belonged to everyone now? One night, a young boy delivered a letter to the Brotherhood's hidden cellar. It was sealed with wax, not of the king, but of a mask. Inside, the words burned like fire. "My brothers and sisters, the time has come. They believe me dead. Let them believe it. But know this, a laugh cannot be buried. On the night of the blood moon, the city shall hear my voice again." It was signed, LV. The members gasped. Was Lazaro alive? Or was someone else writing in his name? The king stared from his balcony, trembling. "Where is he? Where is he?" But no one could answer, because the truth was more terrifying than a ghost or a hidden rebel. Lazaro was no longer just a man. He was an idea, an echo, a laugh that had escaped death itself. And now, it belonged to everyone who dared to defy. The execution that was meant to silence him had instead given birth to a legend. But deep beneath the prison, in the darkest tunnel where no guard ventured, a figure sat against the wall. His hair was long, his beard rough, but his eyes still burned with fire. He chuckled softly to himself, and in the flicker of torchlight his grin returned. "Did you really think I'd let them hang me?" he whispered. The prisoner who laughed during his execution had never truly died. Deep beneath the crumbling stone prison, Lazzaro Vanetti still breathed. He had been there all along, hidden by his brotherhood, his execution faked with the help of loyal friends. The man who swung from the noose had been an actor, a thief who owed Lazaro his life and paid his debt with his death. The world believed Lazaro was gone, but legends thrive best when they are thought to be dead. And now, after years of whispers, his return was near. The night was alive with fire. Torches lit every alley. The bells of the city tolled in panic as peasants stormed the gates. Soldiers clashed with mobs of farmers wielding nothing but pitchforks, yet their courage burned brighter than steel. Across the rooftops, the symbols of a laughing mask appeared, painted in ash and blood. And then it happened. From the balcony of the old courthouse, a figure stepped forward. Cloaked, hooded, yet unmistakable. The crowd gasped. The soldiers froze. A voice rang out. "My friends, did you really think a rope could silence laughter?" The hood fell. It was Lazaro. Alive. In the palace, the king raged. "Impossible! He is dead! I saw him die!" But the sound of the crowd's roar reached even his throne room. His guards begged him to flee, but he drew his sword instead. "I will face this clown myself," he snarled. The square was chaos, flames, smoke, battle cries. Through it all, Lazaro walked calmly, laughing as arrows whistled past him. His laughter was not madness, it was power, infecting the people, making them fearless. At last the king appeared, flanked by armored guards. "You mock me, thief!" the king roared. "You think laughter can defeat steel?" Lazaro tilted his head. "Steel can cut flesh, Majesty, but laughter, it cuts the soul." The crowd roared. The king charged with his sword. Lazaro had no blade, only a chain torn from the prison wall. The fight was brutal, savage, steel against iron, rage against wit. But every time the king struck, Lazaro laughed. Every time the king cursed, Lazaro mocked. The people began to laugh too, first softly, then louder, until even the soldiers' arms trembled at the sound. The king's strength faltered, his swings grew wild, and with one final strike, Lazaro's chain wrapped around the king's weapon, yanking it from his hand. The sword clattered to the stones. The king fell to his knees. The mob surged forward. Some demanded the king's execution. Others begged Lazaro to show mercy. Lazaro raised his hand, silencing them. He bent down, meeting the king's terrified eyes. "You feared my laugh, Majesty, and that is why you lost. Not because I fought harder, but because you could never laugh at yourself." And with that, he turned his back. The people dragged the king away, his cries drowned by their laughter. When the sun rose the next morning, it rose over a free city. The prisons were broken open. The nobles fled in the night. And in the center square, the scaffold still stood, the very one where Lazaro was meant to die. But instead of a noose, it now held a banner, a white cloth painted with a mask, smiling. And so the story of the prisoner who laughed during his execution spread across nations. Some called him a fool, some called him an angel. But to the people, he was something far greater. A reminder that even in the face of death, even in the shadow of tyranny, one laugh could ignite a revolution. And from that day forward, whenever injustice rose, the people whispered only one phrase: remember the laugh.